Hello everyone, this is Dr. Binod Singh from BRICS Institute, New Delhi. Greetings to all of you. I've been asked to speak on democracy and political stability in Asia, especially in the case of Indian experience and South Asia. It's a pleasure to speak to all of you. The debate around this topic has been there for the last hundreds of years. And despite a century-old debate, there is no consensus among the political scientists about the advantage of one system over another, that is democracy versus authoritarianism. So we don't have, we have been endeavoring to find a political system suitable for each country, its civilization, and for lasting peace and existing in social and political harmony. But till now, we have disappointed ourselves. The literature on this topic is huge, and we cannot discuss it here in the short time. But throughout the Cold Period, there was a very heated debate among US-led American liberal system and erstwhile Soviet Union-led centralized economic system. End of the result is that we are still back to the square zero where we started. The debate among the political scientists is back now between US and China. India is also an example of successful democratic transition and also very good economic progress. But compared to China, it has its own limitations, which we'll be discussing in our next few minutes. The most cited example for this debate on democracy and political stability has been the East Asian countries, mainly the South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Singapore, even Hong Kong region, and some other countries in the post-communist world. But most of them, despite achieving very good economic progress, they have not, seen the transition to political democracy, which was expected by their Western architects. So coming back to India, we have the same case here that despite we have successful democracy and political transition, on the economic front, we have been lagging behind with many countries in the region. So in our world, democracy is seen as a sacred cow and being rendered as an ideal political system. What is largely absent in the minds of or in the literature of the Western and European English-speaking scholars is that they have lost the political and social discourse of what has happened in Asia and Africa. So they not only they have failed to predict what has happened in the last 2 decades. They have failed to predict what is going to happen in our societies in near future. So, for example, in case of India, if the democracy will lead to chaos and even creating the kind of problem we had in times of pandemic, people will certainly come on the street and doubt whether this system is applicable in the case of India. So we generally trust that the parliament represent us and the people in parliament are expected to act in the interest of majority of Indian people. But what would happen if the parliament started acting in favor of capitalist class and business communities and just neglect certain aspects which we saw during the farmers legislation in the parliament, which was taken back. So overall democratic experience in India has been very mixed. Indian democracy no doubt provided the political stability that has enabled the state to build institutions and put in place long-term policies that have enabled our country to take advantage of opportunities offered by our own people and also from the foreign countries. India's greatest contribution, it is said, to the world lies in safeguarding democracy and well-being of one-fifth of humanity. But at the same time, we can't deny that there has been enough foreign pressure or influence on our system to continue to follow in the footsteps of Western liberal democracy and do not conform to certain typical issues of India's tribal rights and farmers movement. So hence we have lived a very mixed experience of political stability and democracy in our own country, India. But at the same time, one of the obvious result is that we have never taken this experience to export it as a democratic experience to our neighbors in South Asia or any other country. It is well acknowledged fact that democracy has flourished in India for nearly 7 decades now and has struck deep roots. The Indian policymaking elite class are extremely proud of India's achievements as the most populous democracy and free liberal market economy in the world. And also, it is an example in the post colonial world that India is the only country which has successfully transited to a Western style democratic system. But are we able to sustain it in the near future? And whether we have seen many people coming on the road against corruption, against farmers' rights, against tribal rights, this is a debate which questions the long lasting future of democracy in India. How democracy affects the speed and durability of economic progress of our people is also under question when we compare our achievement versus Chinese achievement, which is ruled by one party authoritarian system. So India and democracy promotion. This topic has been, in the picture again when Joe Biden, the U.S. president, has called for a conference on democracy in the Washington D.C. India was also earlier invited by the Clinton administration in year 2000 to be part of the Democratic Caucus or also the group of democracies at the United Nations. But India has been very careful and balancing when it comes to promotion of democracy in the world. We take humanitarian as view of democracy, and wherever we have to contribute in terms of building peace and stability in Afghanistan, in South Asia, or in Africa or any other region, we have been working in tandem with American and any other partners, especially with the United Nations. But we have never used democracy promotion as a foreign policy tool in case of our 77 decades of foreign policy making in India. We have been hesitant or reluctant to join the US led alliance because of its tendency to link capitalism with imperialism. Many Indians believe that under the guise of democracy promotion, Western countries were intervening in the internal affairs of non Western countries. So, in the near future, India will not adjust its policy of not interfering in the neighbor's political system. But when it comes to safeguard the peace and stability in South Asia and the region, at times India has done to promote democracy in countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives. This is a clear example. So India is the biggest country in South Asia with a population of 1.3 billion people, has maintained functioning democracy is an example which many countries cheers and gives excites as success of democracy. But in India's foreign policy, I think we will never use the promotion of democratic or our own values or our own system as the part of the uh, uh, foreign policy making. So now coming to another topic, with regard to advantage of democracy and authoritarianism, we compare India and China. So in the 21st century, China's and India's economic emergence have been regarded as one of the most significant development in our world. Until late 19th century, China and India were the world's two biggest economies. In 1820, China accounted for about 30% of the global economy. In the last 4 decades, China achieved miraculous growth which no other post-communist country has achieved. As expected, India has also done very well on all fronts, but compared to China, it has underperformed. It has huge potential to do much more better. The reason cited for this democratic political structure, for this slow growth of Indian economy, is its own democratic political structure. While China, when it got liberated under Chairman Mao, it says that first we clean our house, then we invite the guest. In Chinese, they say "打扫房子再请客." But India went, outrightly for a British Westminster type of parliamentary liberal democracy, and it imported some of the best clauses and legislations and system from all the different countries, including Australia, Germany, America, and Canada, and tried its best to make it suitable for the working of Indian people. So Indian constitution was imported, no doubt, but it has been somehow made to work for Indian people, and we have very mixed experience. And there's a famous line quoted from one of our ex-president that whether we have failed our Indian democracy, Indian constitution, or Indian constitutions have failed us. So we have to draw a conclusion and make according transition to our political system. So in the final comment, I would like to say that we must realize that people from different cultures and civilizations have different backgrounds and think differently. We must therefore consider where we can find common ground, in what areas can we work together and achieve consensus in some areas concerning the fate of our planet, such as climate change. Where can we allow differences to persist? We need to find the greatest common divisor and use it as the focus of reform and opening, so that we can accomplish twice as much with what we have done together. As academic scholars, we are obliged to challenge, deceptions and distortions. We are obliged to defend knowledge, facts, and reason. We are compelled to stand up for science, for rational thinking, for humanistic values, and for the institutions that we have built to support them. But we are all under attack in our own countries. We should draw some positive elements from the experience of Western political culture and political system, but outrightly, we should oppose the complete westernization of our political system. We no more live in a unipolar world, so do our polity. Ultimately, only the people and their chosen leaders should decide the course of the country's political trajectory. There also cannot be just one model of development. The Western capitalism has brought enough disasters to human life on earth, and the clear proof is that we all developing countries are compelled to fight the menace of climate change together without having contributed much to it. Even the industrialized and advanced democracies have, failed or reacted so slow to counter the impact of the climate change. Instead, they have decided to call a conference of democracies in Washington, D.C. This is in response to the so-called rise of new authoritarianism. Indeed, in last few years, failure to handle the COVID-19 pandemic, decades of economic stagnation and rising inequality have rekindled support for authoritarian regimes and political parties, one party-led political parties throughout the developed and developing countries. But there are much more complicated issues facing our world today, and the implications of these systematic shifts for the international order. But anyway, let us wish this conference a good success indeed. Thank you very much for your time.